Dear friends, according to the tradition, let us look at what internet users, people that we asked in the street, think about the role of the internet in our society. Internet for society. Facebook, Одноклассники, corporate mail, Twitter, 24 hours of my life, opportunity. Sometimes I can work from home. We met over the net. I don't know. I read all bloggers, Yandex, honesty. Гражданин поэт. Guff is dead. Well, really cool. Easy to spy. Freedom. Protest. Internet. Never heard about it. Well, it's my pleasure to present Konstantin von Eggert, a journalist, international observer, who will moderate our next session. And we shall find out what is internet. Does it help us to improve civil control, or does it help the government to control us? Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I would like to learn what internet really is myself. Perhaps you will help me to learn about it. The meeting, the discussion that we're going to arrange is first of all a discussion for you. I believe you will ask the questions through Twitter, because you have a hashtag in your software. Meanwhile, we shall exchange some views between me, Jeff, and 3 other panelists, members of this session. So let me introduce the panelists. It's John Gaussier, the founder of a number of sets, Metal Layer. He believes his products can be used both by dangerous government and civil rights activist Yelena Panfilova, head of the Russian Transparency International, the person who did quite a lot to fight against corruption, to enhance transparency of Russian government, and Raf Shakirov, whom you know quite well. It's a famous name in Russia. I will just confine myself to saying that this person is the editor-in-chief of Izvestia, and now he leads a number of online projects, including the Big Government project. That's quite interesting. I would like to learn what the big government means, but I would like to start from a question to Jeff Jarvis. The question is quite simple. You, Jeff, have been saying that I liked it, that the government is by default closed, while it can be open only as an exception. And you offered a libertarian point of view in accordance with the First Amendment to the US Constitution. But my question is as follows. What do you think about WikiLeaks? Do you think it's the future?
WikiLeaks itself may not be the future. WikiLeaks certainly teaches us a lesson about the difficulty of keeping secrets. And one can argue about whether or not WikiLeaks should have done what it did, but it certainly becomes apparent that no secret is secure when there is someone who knows it who doesn't care about its secrecy. It's a kind of a new formula of secrecy in organization. When it was rumored that Julian Assange had a large amount of data from the Bank of America held a war room session about what to do. Well, to me, every company should do that. Every government should do that and ask, is there anything we're doing that we'd be ashamed about if it became revealed? And the obvious answer to that is don't do it if you're ashamed of it. And I know that's simplistic, but I do think we get to a point where we have to act as if our institutions can and perhaps even should be public in what they do. And that, I think, does change how we operate. And that's the real lesson of WikiLeaks. Let's remember finally that there was a lot of information in WikiLeaks that had a positive benefit. It showed that the United States State Department was actually pretty good. Most importantly, it confirmed the suspicions of the citizens of Tunisia about their government, which in turn led to their protests, which in turn led to the Arab Spring. Now, that didn't come from WikiLeaks alone, neither did it come from Facebook or Twitter, but it was one more cause, one more trigger that led to a change for good, we hope, in the world. And openness is important. Openness is a right, especially as it comes to government.
В дополнение к тому, что вы говорите.
To continue, we say in Russian it's difficult to translate, but well, it means that you reap the adverse benefits of what you are doing. If we look at the WikiLeaks case, as you said, large banks and government agencies will now spend 10 times more efforts to protect secret information. In Egypt, for instance, the social media revolution brings about the Islamic power who would like to eliminate all those human rights activists. Is it natural?
Yes, I think it is natural. I think the natural state of a public body is to be public. Now, you're right. This could well lead to more walls and more locks and keys for a time. But I think there is an inevitability to information coming out. And to act as if you can be sure that it won't come out is pretty foolhardy today.
Джефф, с вашего позволения, я перейду к...
With your permission, let me ask question to other panelists. Thank you, Jarvis. Stay with us. I don't see any questions from the audience, so I would like to ask questions myself for the time being. And the first question is to Elena Panfilova. Please tell me, well, you listened to Jeff. Your organization is all about anti-corruption, clean relations between the government and the society, between government agencies and the people, free from corruption. Does internet help, or is it just a tool which helps us to let the steam off? You publish some data, people say, oh, bad people are sitting in this or that ministry, and everybody goes calm, and the government doesn't react to such publications. Thank you for your question. Of course, internet plays an important role, but it is not just a platform or a tool for us to publish something. Yes, we have anti-corruption cabinet where people send their messages. We have corruption maps because they visualize. So here some bribes were taken in this clinic, in this school. But this is just a picture, a useful picture, because it shows you, it shows the people that they are part of the process. People are much more active, placing information not about Moscow in general, but their particular street, on something that is taking place locally. People tend to own this information. They are happy to know that they are ready to do something where they live. But there is one little but. First and foremost, internet teaches us very quickly in the last 4 months here in Moscow that internet is not an ultimate medicine. This is just a tool. The main task now is to turn the online activity, which is hectic, How can we move from online activity to offline activity? Because now I can write in Twitter that today we have a bribe. Here, I have the data. I can publish it in Twitter, in Facebook, somewhere else. So what? We have to do something offline, and our society is not yet capable to do that. In the online, we cannot go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with monitor and say, look, this is a bribe. And here we have a big gap. We have a big problem. We need 3 options of moving from online activity to offline activity to real life. And all these 3, not core. First, political pressure. In theory, we should have some political forces who could take this information and in their particular interest will boost the case. Ruling party, opposition, then opposition can take, and in order to come to power, uses this information. So we don't have much of this information. Second lever is reputational. So a mayor looks that in this street there is bribery, corruption, or the Ministry of Health. Oh, what will happen to my reputation? Let me change the situation. No, it doesn't work here in Russia. There is no reputational tools. Our bureaucrats are immune from reputational tools. They will even retweet, look, what they say about me. I'm rich. Huh? And third is social pressure. Here we can do at least something. We can organize ourselves, and if the pit is big and if the fire is all around Moscow, we can go and extinguish the fire ourselves. This is the only area where we can do at least something offline in real life. But this is limited because civil society is very underdeveloped here, very limited in their tools of affecting the power, especially in the anti-corruption area. You can agree with us, we all know the main bloggers, anti-corruption bloggers, and we know them, we know how well they publish facts and figures, but those facts and figures do not turn into lawsuits. No one gets arrested, no one goes to jail. We know the facts, no one is in jail. This is just informing, nothing else. Even if we even if we send 3 billion protests to the prosecutor general, the power will not react. It will just not react, and here we have a very strong gap. The question is to Jeff and John, what about the US? In the US you have different tools, different levers, different factors. Political, reputational, how well do they work? Jeff.
I've had so much time on the floor.
Sure. So, ironically, given the points, if I understood you correctly, that used to be the role of journalists, in not just in our country, but across the world, to put that public pressure on elected officials to act on behalf of the public. And what you see happening now is this diffusion of the ability of journalists to affect that power over governments, and the willingness to listen by governments to their people. One of the things that's interesting about these technologies, these tools, is that to some degree it does put a global pressure on those governments, as we saw in the case of Egypt and many of the other regimes that have toppled over the past year. Just given the fact that although locally they may not have as much power as they used to, globally they have much more power.
То, чем вы занимаетесь.
What you do, John, and that is assistance to the people, visualizing of what exists in the network, but it's very difficult to find without certain skills. How can it affect the future? For example, will it enable forecasting trends or events in business, in consumption, and in terms of political events?
Yes and no. So the short answer is yes. So the tools that I and the colleagues that I've worked with over the past few years, what they allow for is the ability for people who aren't experts and who don't have access to immense resources like governments to do things that were once only in the realm of government. So trend analysis of populations, reacting in real time to an event that's unfolding. These are simple tools that anyone around the world can use, and that's incredibly powerful. The power is in the simplicity. It's not necessarily in the technology, it's in the fact that you don't have to go to school to get a degree to learn how to use products like Ushahidi. You just use them. They're relatively simple.
Я попытался, у меня не получилось, но я уже старый.
Tried, but I failed. But I am an old timer, an old man.
Yeah, I mean, and again, and it's more about usability. It's democratizing access to the platform for making sense of this information, and it also has applications to governments as well. Right now, what you see in governments is there are specialists who can do this, but throughout the rest of organizations, the organization, the NGO, the rest of government, those specialized skills don't exist or they're too expensive. And what tools like this do is they spread the labor out across the organization.
Ну, стали поступать первые вопросы в Твиттере, и вот...
Well, we've started to get first questions from Twitter, and one of them is, I'd like to address it to Rav Shakirov, who is going to be held responsible for the entire Russian government, both big and small, today. So the question is, your assessment. Well, you're here, so you'll have to work. So your assessment of Russian internet regulation initiatives. If we look back, then of course these attempts, unstoppable seemingly, of the Ministry of Telecommunications and also of the Parliament, of the Duma, to push all sorts of draft laws to impose that control, are just covering themselves by good reasoning. But nevertheless, the ultimate goal is to put undesired resources under control, in my opinion, and is done not only in terms of child protection, but also, unfortunately, economic tools are also being used. You remember several years ago there was an initiative not to allow foreign investors to the telecommunications market, and especially not to allow them investing in internet projects. It's clear that, of course, the statement was made, then it was revoked, but de facto the policy is still there, which of course is a huge impediment to, by the way, the growth of investment and the development of the network as such. I'm not even talking about censorship, but these messages are still there. We still hear them one way or the other. And these attempts to keep the internet under control, I see nothing there but harm. And I believe that many questions that were touched upon in the presentation could be regulated thanks to the concept that by structures that all the world is calling self-regulating organizations. Even censorship, if we're talking about pedophilia, prostitution, whichever, some safety programs. I think that here the key role, of course, on behalf of the public, but the key role should be played by self-regulating organizations. It's them, having agreed among themselves, should set the rules for the game. So it shouldn't be the official, because if it's done by an official, they will spoil everything. Now, what John said, if it's journalists who are self-regulating, by definition, there's a finite number of them, even the largest companies. Some of them are part of the trade union, some are not, doesn't matter. But there's a limited number of editorial offices. You can hope to agree on some common rules of the game. It happened in Russia, it's happened in the UK, in other countries, but in the conditions where each particular journalist, like myself, I start feeling that I'm going to be one of the last Russian journalists who retire, because the field will be empty by that time. Everybody will have gone bloggering by that time. So, talking about the broad market, if the number of its participants is virtually infinite, how to go about self-regulation then? No. When I'm talking about self-regulation organizations, I don't really mean trade unions. They would be the last people that I would be talking about. Well, talking about the internet, of course it's a business. And how's the structure is built there? So trade unions are structures, organizations that protect employees against employers. And they set certain rules. And what you've just named, what you just referred to, the Chamber of Information disputes, it reminds me of some creative efforts in self-regulation. Look, self-regulating organizations are the organizations that have donations, they have lawyers. If you're not part of that, if you're not a member, then you're not in the market. It's just you don't exist. You lose to competitors if you don't become their member. So a decision of a self-regulating organization regarding their member in medicine, in health, whatever, is mandatory for their members. It looks like a party. It's worse than a party. These are very strict organizations. And why they're so strict? Because they're protecting the interests of the industry, in the parliament, anywhere else. These are very structured organizations, which this country, unfortunately, are absent. And Konstantin, you won't let me tell a lie. Unfortunately, we don't have them in journalism. So in America, there's an association of publishers, but do we have anything like this? We have something like that in TV. They're kind of getting their question solved, but nowhere else. Like I tried to do it when I was editor-in-chief of Kommersant, but I failed. And we have an acute need to have them, to lobby public interests, to protect our industry, including the internet. And how will the big government side do it? Well, you'll be laughed, but we have ideas about that. And if you have an interest, I'm prepared to discuss that as well. Well, now we have a very interesting question from Twitter, which I think is directly related to what Jeff Jarvis was talking about. Can there be negative impacts on public activists from the privacy initiatives? Can there be negative impacts on the life of public activists stemming from those privacy initiatives?
I think so. I think that back to the prior discussion about regulation and self-regulation. I think that government fancies itself the best protector of privacy, but of course government is our worst threat to privacy. Government can use the internet to surveil, and obviously does in various countries. And I think that we have to watch out for that. And so there is some talk, for example, about trying to eliminate anonymity online. Well, that sounds good. Once again, anonymous comments can become uncivil and nasty. But anonymity is very important online because it is a means of protecting whistleblowers and protesters and people who live in vulnerable situations. Someone who has a lifestyle that's not condoned in a country, for example. So I think that we have to be aware that we have to protect speech. Now, when you do that, you protect good speech and bad speech. So the idea of regulating journalism, well, when everyone can be a journalist, then do we try to regulate everyone's speech? I get allergic to government involvement in speech and thus media. And I know that you used the word for me earlier, libertarian, and I sound like that. I actually voted for Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton before. I'm a Democrat in the U.S. But I think that the internet spirit is a bit libertarian. It's about freedom, and it's about maintaining that freedom. Government is not always a bad actor. I would ask one more time, why are governments around the world suddenly rushing to regulate the internet? I believe it's because the internet threatens.
Вот еще маленькая добавка к гигантскому...
Now, a small addition to the limitless store of data that John Gosier is tapping into. We know that Jeff Jarvis voted for Barack Obama, and this could also be visualized. Yelena Panfilova had something to add. Well, because they use the term social activists. This is exactly what we're trying to do. And there are three very important issues here. And I'm very happy that the word whistleblowers was used. In fact, for social, well, any person who is posting anything in the internet can become a social activist, even if they don't understand it. Because some information that people publish, well, people just don't know if this information is going to work. Or even when myself or my organization is posting something in Facebook, we don't always understand which particular posts will get traction with the public. And then it turns out that one of our volunteers would post something, and this post will attract everybody's attention, and he's becoming public activist in everybody's eyes, and the spotlight's on him, and that causes my concern about their safeties and other rights. And here, I'd like everyone to understand that in Russia, there's not a single word, not a single line of legislation about protecting the whistleblowers. And it turns out that a person who will blow his whistle about anything at all, they stay one-on-one without problem and get any problem you can imagine. You'll be surprised to know, but we're working with that very closely. The Ministry of Internal Affairs has come to us. Please do something. We don't have whistleblowers, so people come to us and ask us what to do. So they gave us a whole stack of documents where court cases were initiated, but then people who blew the whistle got into all sorts of negative consequences after that. The business was taken away, something else, and in this light, the privacy problem starts playing with all the different lights, and we start to understand that it goes beyond the internet. In our society, it goes well beyond the internet, but in the internet specifically, because we have to protect everyone, including those people who are de facto social activists but do not recognize themselves as such. That's one problem. And the second problem is about the impression that Ann Wines got from a speech of one congresswoman in the US. She said, when you post anything in the internet, you always have to remember about the impact it will produce on yourself, your near and dear, and your colleagues. You'll never have to forget that your privacy is not only about yourself. You can, feel responsible for yourself. You can post all your status in Foursquare, Instagram, and by the way, that helps hugely in my work. There's nothing for me to hide. Everybody's asking me, why are you posting all this? If, what I say is that if everybody wants to find me, they'll certainly be able to do that. So they certainly know that I'm sitting on this podium at a big tent event in Riyadh, not doing anything bad. So this indeed is about my openness, also as a way to protect oneself against claims that you're doing something wrong. But you also have other people around you and their privacy, their safety. This, I think, is a much more difficult problem, and it hasn't been discussed in our society to the way it deserves to. Because when some public activist writes something, does he or she understand that it's not only him or her, but that they're also responsible for some collective point of view? I think no. The answer is no, not in principle. Nobody is understanding this. Had it been a cynic, I would say, well, got your 15 minutes of spotlight. You have to be prepared for the consequences, but not a cynic. So anybody else? Regarding the privacy protection, the point is that all the open government mechanisms, that's exactly what we're trying to do in Russia. well, so, I mean, we certainly have to have a privacy protection law. Any kind of private data. In the US, one of the big tools was the 1966 law on freedom of information access. And in a way, it's even more important in the modern world than the Public Media or Media Freedom Act. Talking about public data protection, private data protection, this is an important thing. But one of the principles of this kind of protection for whistleblowers in the open government system is about the openness of a dialogue. So when you're creating an open government system, you're not only tracking some bad facts or bad acts, but you actually address them to officials. One of the main slogans of the open government is no more one-to-one communication with government fiction. You're working in the public field, and this fact of being public is partly becoming a tool to protect you. And by the way, we had a case, there was, well, a person was ambushed, and we made sure that all the information about any crimes, we had one of the proposals that any crimes against such people should be under special control. Another idea is that if a person is saying something, it should be under their own name. I, for one, don't have accounts in social networks under my own name. I have different nicknames. So I'm there, but I'm not registered, so to speak. So you're working undercover? Yes, undercover. So because I've had all absolutely negative experience, whatever you say on the internet will be used against you. And you can't even imagine how. So I think that should be something to avoid. So my personal feeling is that it's better to be undercover if you're a private person. But if you're a public activist, it might be better to work under your own name. So I would debate that. Well, there are different opinions, but I tell you what, it's easier for us to protect such people if they work under their own name. Also, I liked your phrase about protecting those people. Well,
The point that you made earlier about the accidental whistleblower. One of the beauties of public channels of information like Twitter, to some extent all social media, is that so I'll give you an example. There's a project that I've been involved with where an institution is looking for trends through social data that indicate whether or not you can predict, using social data, that unrest will occur in countries or in municipalities and localities. That's only possible because this information is public. If it was private, this wouldn't be possible. And therefore, the people who are inherently participating on public channels do need to be protected should there be something that they accidentally indicate that they aren't even aware of.
Вопросы продолжают поступать в Твиттере. Вот интересный был такой вопрос, который...
Well, we keep getting questions from Twitter, and there was an interesting question, perhaps to Jeff mainly, but I would also invite all the other panelists to take part in this discussion. Although, please be brief, because we only have about half an hour left. Can the notion of morals be applied here, for instance, protecting children against pedophiles in such a sophisticated environment as the internet?
Question on Twitter and already answered that I think that it applies to the internet as much as it applies to society. That the internet is a broad umbrella, a big tent over all of society and all of us. And by the way, the technology can be used by good people and by bad people for good ends and bad ends. So what we have to go after and regulate, again, is the behavior of people, not the behavior of the technology. The technology can be, we don't even know how the technology can be used yet. I'll give you a quick example. In Germany, Ilse Aigner, the head of consumer protection, decreed some months ago that using facial recognition and geolocation technology should henceforth be taboo. And I understand why she's saying that, right? It sounds creepy to realize that someone could know who you are and where you are. But imagine how we could use that technology to find missing children, or to find people after the disasters in Haiti or in Japan. The technology itself is not bad. The technology can be used for bad things. Someone else on Twitter also talked about a certain site that allowed people to put their private parts up on the internet. Yes, it allowed that, but it comes and goes, and we as a society choose how to use this. That's really what's happening now. So I don't think we should act as if we're all a bunch of sheep who follow a technology down a bad road. We're the same society and the same people with the same ethics and morals that we were yesterday. We have new tools and new ways to connect. We have to learn how to do it well. But I think one must have an inherent faith in our fellow men and women. And if you don't, then that's what leads to dictatorship. Believing in your fellow man and woman leads to democracy and free markets and reform religion and journalism and education, because you believe that people are worthy. And that's my starting point.
Вопрос, причем сразу два фактически, которые, скорее всего, падут опять на...
Another two questions that will probably be addressed to Rav Shakirov. So the first one you've already answered partly, but perhaps it might be interesting to talk more about that. Will the government, the Russian government, want to start proactive dialogue with the net users? And the second question, are there already success stories about open government in other countries? Well, for the first question, I can say that when we're talking about the government, the state, you have to understand, your officials like to use the word a state, and in their understanding, they stated themselves. But in actual fact, this is not the case. As we understand, in the ruling elites, there are different trends and streams. So I think had there not been, had the pro-reform trend not existed, this whole idea of a big government would not have emerged. And we've borrowed this idea from developed countries. It's been in existence for decades. It started to emerge in European country after World War II. And if you ask me to speak on this, and it also be part of my answer, we've launched these resources. We're not claiming a monopoly on that. We invite everyone. We're prepared to work with all the interested parties, with Rospil, Rosyama. Why so? Because it's important to interact with the authorities, especially with that part of the authorities that's pro-reform. Because the open society, the civil society, is not something that emerges and can develop in a test tube. Because unless it's able to interact with the government, it will not have any impacts. And so such institutions were set up in the US and Canada, in the Philippines, in Indonesia. 80 countries have already voiced their desire to promote the open government partnership concept. And by the way, we've also submitted our request. Why do we need that? In order that the domestic legislation are always subordinate or lower in priority to international treaties and international law. So therefore, getting into this organization, we're getting an extra tool to put pressure on the officials. Just a small example, at the municipal, local level. In the States, it's cyclic fix. In the UK, it's Fix My Street. So 600,000 users can go to local governments. And by the way, these local governments don't really have employees who are keeping tracks of potholes in the roads. But citizens are doing it themselves. So the whole society is becoming their controllers. That's one example. Then open heart surgery. So I specifically give you such a local specific examples. Over the year of the existence of a website that was publishing a success statistic on heart surgery, in the UK, they managed to say 50% more patients. How does it work? They publish statistic, people sign up for hospitals. You know, how do we usually get these recommendations? We talk to friends. So people sign up for surgery to those hospitals where there are more success stories. And this has reduced the lethality by 50%. You can look at a higher level. The UK, Latvia, 10,000 signatures in the internet, although all of them authenticated, identified. And they, pass a draft law in the parliament. In Estonia, the same. You know, they took out referendums and self-governance in our law on our local government. But in Estonia, in Switzerland, where these e-government tools are at work, they have the largest number of citizen polls. And which means that between the elections, you're working with the open government. Because the government, like, is a, they can't know everything. When people confuse a traditional democracy institutions such as parliament and ask questions, why would you need an open government? But most countries have it because we know among ourselves much more, because we're more creative, we see things around us, we're offering these solutions. Another example, in the US, they have a Challenge GOP website. And so they kind of address us as an internet user. All the ministries, all the departments are doing that, including DOD, like the latest order. With an award of $100,000. Why so? It looks like it's a lot, but had the government done it in the normal contract procedure, they would spend much more. It was about some satellite development. A social example. There's a problem with food in the US, like healthy food. So the winner on evangelizing a healthy life was a schoolboy. He became a celebrity in just 2 or 3 days. So he offered to put it under press, to show, to put it under press and see what kind of substances come out. Salt, sugar, fat, and things like that. Well, I've got plenty of examples. I imagine what they say in Twitter. Rav Shakira said that the US has a hunger problem. Well, I just wanted to say that this ascension to open government partnership is very important from Russia. A long time ago, when we were part of the Soviet Union, we underestimated our ascension to a lot of international organizations, as OSCE and others. And now look, our citizens, when they are desperate to find a fair judgment in the Russian court, can go somewhere to dispute that. Well, nobody's saying that the government is bad, the authorities are bad, but you need to interact with them and put pressure on them. We already said reputational mechanism doesn't work, just posting doesn't give the results, so the pressure is the only way to go. Well, you sounded just like a pre-election speech. Well, I'm sorry, John. A few seconds, because you mentioned the food problem in the U.S. I remember the famous Soviet joke going back to 1951 when citizen Ivanova writing a letter to President Reagan saying that we read in Pravda that U.S. citizens don't have enough, have leftovers. So could you please send those leftovers to us?
Western economies in the global north. In Kenya, for instance, there's a huge push for open government initiatives where the public does hold their local ministers and the greater government accountable for indecision when it comes to civil society. And so we've seen both a huge embracement of this by the local populations, but also from the government itself. It's actually starting to hold itself more accountable based on public interest and based on SMS messages and so on.
Несколько вопросов еще.
Several more questions in Twitter. I don't even know which to choose. One of them was to Yelena Parfilova, specifically. How a journalist devoted to the idea of transparency will be protecting their own sources at the same time. Well, if it's a journalist, then by law on mass media, they will be protecting them, their sources. As Rav Shakirov said, it's already outdated. It's not too bad. In fact, the law on access to information is not too good. But therein lies the rub, I think. If it's a regular journalist registered so they'll be able to go to court and protect themselves. But if we are thinking about a web journalist, a web activist, who are already becoming kind of journalists, so the boundary is quite blurred, and we don't have anything to protect them. And what I am aware of is that the publishers of such information are kind of assuming a responsibility for that. If you take the burden of publishing it, then you take the burden of responsibility as well, protecting your sources, meaning. And I think it's a very important story. Regarding those people, we know their names and faces. They become like points of broadcasting on the internet. And a lot of people are writing me saying, Yelena, we sent you this, why didn't you publish this? And you know, to explain the person that I can't publish it just to protect yourself, it's a big problem for me. Or take Alexei. They also send a lot of information to them, and they can't publish everything because, you know, posting it in the internet, it's not just about fun or collecting voices and likes, or polls and likes. It's a huge responsibility, especially if we're talking about situations that touch upon safety and life, and huge money belonging to those people that we disclose information about. And in this sense, this problem of issue of responsibility is intrinsically related to public control, because you can build whatever number of maps from websites, but if you are not taking responsibility for the safety of the person who's given you this information, then history will take you out of the face of the earth, because you have this responsibility. You have to protect. So unless you do it, so you can only publish the information when you're sure about this information, just like in a normal court case, when a normal journalist would be prepared to go to court to protect the soil.
Actually, I have a very good question to complement public control and open government. And the question is to Rav Shakirov. Please do not delete other questions. The question is like this: why the official service, UYAMAH, has to be reacted by the bureaucrat, but he doesn't want to, doesn't have to react to any blog messages. Well, we don't have some things here, some tools. Why did we gather here? We have to protect the publisher. The correspondent can prefer not to disclose the source and go to prison as a result. And it happens in Russia. We also have the same problem here. And this is a problem. Institutions of civil society are not well developed. And civil society must be ready to protect itself. Then we must be able to hire highly skilled lawyers who would protect them and who would also develop some legislative initiatives, because we have a lot of legislative gaps. So sources of information must be protected, especially when we fight against corruption. We have problems. We have various initiatives here, and there are some points related to official investigations, and if we disclose the source, the person can get into trouble. Yes, I criticize that initiative, and I will criticize it. I cannot translate when everyone speaks at once. I don't like the name of the initiative. Forget about it. I believe that such projects with such gaps should not be implemented at the government level. Rav Shakirov should not be able to control all kinds of subtleties across the Russian territory. How can you raise such initiatives in Moscow across Russia with such a number of gaps? your initiatives should be such that each and every person, end user, could do something. So there are some federal bad things, federal gaps, and there are local gaps as well. We have followers in North Ossetia, in Komi and Perm. Then it all started, thanks to you. It all started, yes. And we have some localization. We have some local initiatives to complement. Why do we have to react to bloggers if we had only one window? Well, the European countries which followed the way of the United States or Brazil, who were the trail makers in open government, they decided not to set up a lot of sites. If you want to complain and you don't know which site to go, they opened one window, which is very useful, because whatever problem you have, at any level of government, you go to that one level, and then through a tree which is provided, you get to the required resource. And civil servants say, I don't know this blogger, I don't go to this blog. But if it's mentioned in the system of the open government, then it goes to the specific person. And there are some key performance initiatives which would help us to promote a civil servant or demote him or fire him. Because we can see that there were such a number of issues, and then he can fired. How many people were fired? But we have to start from something at least. Let me moderate. We have little time left. We have two questions to discuss. One of them is to the US participants, John and Jeff. It looks like a poem. After SOPA, PIPA, and ACTA acts, we have a CISPA act. So, what do you think about CISPA now?
With SOPA and PIPA, it's a great example of how these new communication channels that we have available are able to actually affect policy. What happened with, in the case of both of them, is that they were sort of being passed through government without much attention until a few people started to actually pay attention to what was going on in the legislation, bloggers, journalists, what have you. And when people found out about that, there was a call to action to actually oppose these laws and put pressure on private sector companies who were lobbying governments to pass these, because it makes them more profitable to actually pursue people who are sharing content online without paying for it. So these organizations had a vested interest in actually curbing citizen sharing of this information. So that call to action actually turned out really well by actually bypassing government entirely and putting, well, not entirely, but mostly, in going directly to the companies and saying, hey, we aren't going to be your customers anymore if you guys support this and if you don't ask for it to be repelled. And what we saw was the government reacted almost immediately, in response to the lack of support from the people who had been lobbying it to begin with.
Jeff, anything to add?
I unfortunately couldn't come to Moscow and was stuck in New York, but as a result, I got to meet yesterday with some leaders, venture capitalists, publishers, academics, and others that asked the question after SOPA PIPA, what next? And on the one hand, there are many threats to the internet. CISPA is one of them, ACTA, there's all kinds of initials. And a few of the things that came out of this meeting to share with you, this group, is number one, we need an early warning system of these laws and regulations and other things that mean to control the internet. Two, Tim O'Reilly, a well-known online tech publisher in the US, proposed that we need to have a narrative around the internet and its value and benefits. We need to start measuring the economic benefit of the internet. And we've seen in the US that the internet does indeed collapse some industries, newspapers and retail, but the internet creates incredible new opportunity. The third thing that was suggested yesterday, we should expect our politicians to pledge internet freedom. I mean, we only vote for them if they take that pledge. Venture capitalists suggest that we use online advertising to then support those politicians. That pledge.
If I can add to that, I'd say a fourth one is more sophisticated government officials who can actually understand the ramifications of the laws that they're trying to pass. Because it's actually, in many cases, a lack of awareness of what the ripple effects of what they're trying to curb by passing a law, and how it ends up affecting society.
Я прекращаю прием.
Let me stop accepting tweets because we have very little time left. We have one very interesting question, though. The question which is will be excellent to conclude our session. Is there any risk that Russia would choose the Chinese way of regulating the internet? Let me start with the Russian participants. Lena, you're welcome. I think they will try to go that way, but they will not succeed. Why? Because everyone says the same, that you cannot put toothpaste back into its container. It's already out. You cannot undo things. You cannot uninvent things. Because the network nature of the internet. So the question was whether do we need a leader. The leader is needed when you have a big problem and you have to consolidate resources. But for the internet as such, we don't need any leader, we don't need any Chinese options, no matter who would try. We have to think about public internet. But there are a lot of home users with cats, dogs, and everything. So they will eliminate the government faster than any opposition, because for many people, home usage of the internet is the way of life. They cannot do without it, without any public, without any social thing. Do they read public political sites? You cannot leave the internet the Chinese way, because for cats and dogs open, for all the rest closed. This is impossible. And since our society, due to all kind of things, lack of political competition, lack of media, so we started living in a social way in the internet. So the government cannot do anything about it. Even if it tries to impose the Chinese version, it will fail. So I have 2 cats, so everything is okay. Everything is okay with Chinese cats. They're quite all right. Please, do not relax. Well, how can we close the internet? They will close the internet owners. Owners are always available, are always vulnerable. So censorship is quite feasible and quite possible. And the Chinese options is quite possible. Think about it, of course. You realize that the Russian power, the Russian government, has a lot of people who dream of the Chinese way. So please don't relax. Internet is not invulnerable. All kind of freedom has to be paid for. It needs some struggle for it. It has to be defended. So the civil society structure has to develop the right legislative basis for the people who protect their civil society should be protected not only by the government, but also by the NGO with powerful lawyers. That's all I wanted to say. So, 2 conclusions then. I would vote for what Rav Shakirov said. I would vote for you. Then, you have a lot of, there are a lot of journalists here. Well, let us play a game. What is the difference between what Jeff Jarvis said? So he had dark skies. Now we see some light outside. It's already dawn in the United States. So we thank him that despite the time difference he took part in our meeting. It was quite interesting. Let us thank Jeff Jarvis. Applause. Thank Raf Shakirov, Yelena Panfilova and John Gozier. Thank you so much indeed.